Hello and welcome back. Right now we're about to meet Callum and he's going to take us through the extraordinary journey we can go on to make ourselves an incredible October Plenty hat. So I hope you've got all your materials together because here comes Callum.
Hello, my name's Callum. I'm one of the Lions part and I'm here to talk to you about hats and how to decorate your hat for our October Plenty Festival. So in 3 days time, October the 25th, we will be having our virtual October Plenty Festival instead of live. But if you've ever been to see any of our live events, you will have noticed that quite a lot of the characters and indeed some of the audience like to wear beautifully decorated hats celebrating this time of harvest. Now, I'm surrounded by all sorts of different hats here because I'm really interested in the history of the way people used to dress. So whilst we're going through how we might decorate our hats, I will probably talk about some of these as well. Now, to begin with, you're probably going to need a hat of some kind. Doesn't really matter what it is. I think I might decorate this one, which is my hat called a Panama. Called that because the straw that it's made from is hand woven in South America, and then it's shaped into these lovely summer hats that they're very, very popular. But I might actually choose to decorate this hat here simply because it's quite tall and I can put lots of stuff on it and it's got a nice wide brim. But you can use any hat you've got. You could even just use a piece of ribbon and tie things to that and tie that around your head if you wanted to, if you don't happen to have a hat. But what we're trying to do is to celebrate this season of plenty, which means really it's a harvest festival. So bringing in things from nature. Now, it just so happens that I have a garden. It's only small, but I live in London. So I don't have access to wheat and root vegetables and things like that. But some of the things I've found in my garden, which I'm very thankful for this year, I'm amazed actually. Look at this, a fig. I've grown this on the tree in my garden. It's the first time it's ever done it for as long as I've lived here, which I'm very, very happy about. I've also got a rose. I've still got rose bushes in the garden that are putting out flowers, so I'm quite thankful about that. Another one there. Now, I don't know if you know what this is. That, again, first time I've ever had one. It's a passion fruit grown in my very own garden. And then I have some berries from my pyrocanthus. Just if you are going to use any berries, probably best ask your parents' advice about that, because some berries are a little bit poisonous and probably shouldn't really be chosen. But if your parents are helping you, they'll be able to advise you. I've also got here some leaves. Now this leaf comes from my hazelnut tree, and I was hoping that I'd be able to decorate my hat with hazelnuts, but unfortunately the squirrels have beaten me to it, so I can't find any hazelnuts at the moment, which I'm very, very upset about. But what I do have lots of are these apples. As of course, October Plenty we've often tied in with Apple Day down at Borough Market and in various places like the Brogdale Apple Trust, etc. So I've got some of these tiny little crab apples here, and I'm going to use those to decorate my hat. I've also got a range of feathers here. Now, feathers historically is one way that hats have been decorated for centuries. I have here a quite lowly person's hat. I mean, it's, well, when I say lowly, it's a very tall hat, but it's decorated here with a pheasant feather there. And that could have been originally, perhaps, because they were quite pleased that they were able to catch a pheasant for their dinner. Who knows? Sometimes feathers were used to great extremes. I've got a hat here, a little bit like you might have seen during the reign of King James I and 6th of Scotland, 1st of England. And this is very much the style of hat that you see him wearing in his portraits. It's a blocked felt hat. This one happens to be black. It's lined with beautiful changeable silk. It has a cockade on the side of it, a massive great big pearl. Gold going around here on the hatband. Now that would have told people that if you saw anyone wearing a hat like this, they must have been really important, because they actually passed laws saying that if you were not of a certain rank in society, you couldn't wear gold on your clothes. It's a very, very complex law. It's called the Laws of Sumptuary. Well, I'm not going to go into it now. What else have we got here? We've got this cockade and these beautiful feathers. That's what we started talking about. These are egret feathers from a beautiful water bird, and these are old antiques. You can't get these now, so I'm very privileged to have those, but that's very much the style that you would have seen in King James's time. However, the sorts of feathers that you might be able to find, you could just go to your local park and pick them up. Now these ones, I think, probably come from a guinea fowl, so these didn't actually come from the local park. I found them. This is a chicken feather. I'm not sure what this one is. I think it's a bird of prey of some sort. If any of you are ornithologists, perhaps you could type in on the comments section as to what you think that is. I'm not entirely certain. It spent a long time trying to work out what it was, but that I found in the countryside. What else have we got here? Now, I've also got one of these. Anybody recognise what this is? Yes, of course, it's a peacock feather. Now, there's lots of superstitions attached to peacocks. Some are good, some are bad. Some people think that this eye is there to ward off evil spirits, so it's a good thing to put in your hat. Other people say that it's a very, very bad thing to put in your hat. And theatre is full of strange traditions. And one tradition, if you get really superstitious old-fashioned actors, they'll say never ever go on stage in a costume that has peacock feathers in it, which must be a little bit annoying for designers if they've spent a long time making them. But yes, you could put one of those in, depending on which way you lean on the superstition front. You might find yourself a feather like this. I think that's a duck feather. I found that down by the river. So there's all sorts of things there. But the extremes of feather wearing in your hat, at least for men anyway, I reckon came about in the time of Samuel Pepys and King Charles II. If you saw my little programme that I did about trying to recreate the cries of London and what people wore in Shakespeare's day, those woodcuts were originally collected by Samuel Pepys, and this is the sort of hat that he might have chosen to wear. Again, it's a felt hat with a wide brim, and it's got gold going around it, and then these feathers here. Now, these are not the kind of feathers that you can just pick up in the street. These are ostrich, and although we can buy them in our local haberdashers, I can get them quite easily where I live, but in Samuel Pepys's day, these had to come all the way from Africa and were incredibly expensive. In fact, in Shakespeare's time, one of these ostrich feathers would cost more than a month's wages for a schoolmaster. Imagine that, and look how many feathers there are on here. It's also got ribbons on it as well, lots and lots of ribbons. And this was incredibly fashionable in Pepys's time. They put them absolutely everywhere, not just on their hats, they put them on their shoulders, around their waist, on their breeches, around their knees, because, again, they were really, really expensive. So you could add something like that. You could add some big feathers to it as well. Oh, and incidentally, not everybody at that time dressed like that at all. There were people who were much more serious-minded than perhaps somebody like Samuel Pepys. And you might well have seen them in portraits. wearing hats like these. They liked things to be very pure. They wanted everyone to be very pious and religious, etc. They've now become known as Puritans, but you'll often see them in paintings of Dutch merchants or some of the London merchants who are very strongly minded about being good all the time. I like these hats. I think they're great. So we've got lots of options. We can decorate with natural produce. We can decorate with feathers. We could use some leaves as well. Now, I've actually got some false leaves here. They're made of silk, so that you can put these quite happily around your hat. Now, these ones are copies of rose petals, or rose leaves rather. So they're fine to wear, but these are ivy. Now, ivy's a little bit poisonous, so you don't really want to be wearing that around your head. But these ones, they're not real. They're just made out of fabric, so we could put that on there as well. I've even got a shell here. Now, why would you have a shell? Well, it's actually a very old tradition, going right back to the medieval times, because these shells are linked with going on pilgrimage. They're known as Saint Jacques or Saint Jack or Saint James, and if you were a very devout medieval pilgrim and you wanted to walk from London to Santiago Compostela in Spain, you would put one of these in your hats to tell everyone that you'd gone all that way. So you might be wearing something like this, a lady's hennin, and have that stitched onto your hat. So you could use shells, you could use anything else. What you're going to need probably is a pair of scissors, some string, some needle and thread. You might want something like this, an awl, but again, I think that's probably down to parents as to whether or not you should be working with those. Perhaps that's a job for the adults to use. It can be a little bit dangerous, but it's useful for making holes in the apples and things like that. So let's start thinking about decorating our hat. I've got some thread here. It's quite thick thread, it's button thread. And I've got one of my crab apples. And I'm just going to thread that on there. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a hole using my awl. So just be a little bit careful about that. So that goes through the apple first of all. And then that should make it quite a bit easier. Now ideally I want to be able to have enough apples go all the way around the hat. So you might want to come back to me. Getting there. So we're almost there. I've got on a lot of the apples and I've put on one of my figs. I'll attach another one in a moment. Although these are quite heavy, so we'll see how the hat copes with that. Now, I'm no apple expert by any means. Some of the Lions Part are. But as far as I'm aware, these are crab apples. And I was very surprised to learn a while back that Shakespeare refers to crab apples in A Midsummer Night's Dream when Puck says that he will disguise himself. Sometimes he disguises himself in the likeness of a crab. When I was younger, I always thought that meant a crustacean crab, but it actually means one of these, which they used to put into hot drinks, and then it would bob about on the surface. So that's what he's talking about. So there we go. That's going to go onto the hat, and that is the start of my hat band. So I've put it onto the hat, and the last thing to do is just to stitch it into the hat band, which I've already pretty much done. Oh, little word of warning, when you're stringing the apples, make sure you tie off your first one, because otherwise, whilst you're adding all the others, they all fall off at the end, as happened to me twice. So that's one way of stopping that from happening. So what I've done is I've put them all the way around, and then the last apple that I put on, I'm taking the thread and passing it through the first apple and then I've stitched it onto the hat band there. So now we can add a few more bits and bobs. I'm going to put on the one of the roses from the garden, so that can go into the hat band. And this rose, which has still got its leaves on, I'm going to take the leaves off. Just kind of cut those off, because really I'm going to use those for decoration elsewhere. That's probably all I need. And then that goes into the hat band as well. So we've got two roses, the apples. I'm going to add some of the leaves to the hat band. Now this is where it's actually quite useful to have a hat band, that just goes round the hat. So even on my Panama, I've got one of those, it's already there. But if you've got a hat that doesn't have a hat band, you can just take a piece of ribbon or anything else and just wrap that round it, and then that gives you a good basis for putting in your decoration. So put in another set of leaves there. I'm quite liking also the fact that so far we've got a kind of colour match with the natural brown in the leaves here being mirrored by the brown of the felt, and then the red and the white in the hat band here also mirroring the colours of the apples there. So I've put in some of the rose leaves going around there. These are the natural ones. I might add some of the silk ones in a moment. But I want to get a little bit of the height on the hat, because it's got such a nice tall crown. So I'm going to put in my hazelnut leaves at the front there. So now I'm trying to add the pyracanthus, which is again probably something really for adults to do rather than the younger children, if you were to use something like this. Pyracanthus has some really sharp thorns on them, which makes it a fantastic bush, and it's got these beautiful berries, but it does make it a little unpleasant to work with. However, one of the great things is it means I don't have to do any stitching, because I'm actually using the thorns to put into the hat. And because this is a tall hat, it's going to come to about there. It's not going to hit my head at all. So I'm relatively happy with that. And I think that colour scheme is coming on quite nicely. Now we did mention feathers. So I've got a number of different feathers here. And in various parts of the country, you might sometimes see Morris men or mummers with lots and lots of feathers in their hats. More often than not they tend to be pheasant feathers, but I guess it depends on what is running around the estate where your village is or whatever. So I'm putting in these feathers here. So these are all quite local, not all that exotic. And in fact, because we are a theatre company, and obviously most of our work is performing plays that have been written by somebody, I'm going to put in this. So this is a quill, fairly obviously. It started life looking like this. It's just a normal goose feather. And oftentimes, if you see a film where they're writing in Shakespeare's day or whatever, you'll see them with a great big thing like this. But historically, what they would do is they would actually strip off the flights on the side just to make it more comfortable to hold, and just leave these bits on the end. So as an acknowledgement that we work with writers, and that writers are very important, and without them there are no plays, I'm going to put that in there as well, so that we have a celebration of the intellectual arts as well. So I think a few more leaves, and then that's possibly my hat done. it'll be up to you as to how many different elements you add to yours and what you're going to use. But whatever you think you can find around you, preferably something natural, but it might not be. It might be things that you have made or anything. Perhaps you might want to add something like this. It's a wedding decoration, in fact. I'm going to add a couple of those to the hat. So I've added some more leaves. This time I've added the fabric ivy leaves. We've got the hearts, the quill, the feathers, the hazelnuts, the roses, and of course I mustn't forget the passion fruit, because we're very passionate about what we do. And I'm just very pleased that I've managed to grow one. I didn't realise that I'd get any fruit off of that tree this year. So there we go. That is my October plenty hat. Oh, I think there's plenty on there, but of course you could always add more. And of course you don't necessarily just have to stick with hats. You might want to make yourself a mask. Not the kind of mask that everyone's wearing at the moment. Perhaps like this. So that you too could be a little bit like the Green Man. I think I should go wandering around the streets like this. On October Plenty Day, of course. So send in the photographs of the hats that you've made, or indeed the masks. And hopefully we'll see you at another October Plenty in the flesh. Bring your hats.
Well, wasn't that amazing? I hope you've got a really gorgeous hat to wear now for a Sunday for October Plenty. Thank you, Callum. Tomorrow, come back at 11 AM and we'll meet Pete and Kate, and they'll tell us exactly how to dance the horse's brawl. Absolutely fantastic. By the way, didn't you think, isn't it incredible how a hat can give you a character, as can a dance? What does this make me feel like? I know. If I were a rich man,